Auburn football is jam-packed with talent at wide receiver, but who is Hugh Freeze really going to start? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does is my partner in crime every week to break down Auburn football. Ike Jones joins the show. We're talking wide receiver today. It feels like we've been talking a lot of wide receiver, but damn it, Ike, it's worth talking about because these guys are going to be really, really, really good. So on today's show, we'll talk about that wide receiver room, who we expect to start, and how they project to play in the many different formations Hugh Freeze is looking to employ this fall on the football field. Ike, let's start with a general overall temperature check of the wide receivers. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this is one of the most talented groups we've seen on the Plains. It might be one of the most talented groups in the SEC or even the country this year.
It's going to be up there. I won't profess to have done a deep dive into what every wide receiver room around the country is looking like, but I find it hard to believe there are going to be a lot of wide receiver rooms that are more talented, maybe have experienced more, blah, 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 more talented than this Auburn room.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch them. We saw the maturation of this wide receiver room start last year. Now, we had a recent sit down with Hugh Freeze, and he singled out some guys that we're going to talk about on today's show as having made huge leaps this offseason. Let's start at the top here. Let's start at the top with who we think is going to be wide receiver number one, numero uno, the first guy to get the ball. And I think this name is no shock to anybody, but it's one young Cam Coleman. Cam will be the first guy up there, one of the most electric freshmen in the country. Obviously, he was a top 5 overall player in the country coming out of high school. He showed every bit of it. The Phoenix City product had a great freshman campaign where he brought in 37 receptions, Ike, and he produced 598 yards. 8 touchdowns is what stands out to me. He showed that he can make every type of catch behind the DBs. Cam Coleman projects to have one of the better seasons this year, but they say that leap from year 1 to year 2 is the biggest that most teams and players make, expecting big things from him at wide receiver. Cam Coleman, can we agree, undisputed number 1 here?
I don't know about undisputed number 1, but I think it's he's got a strong argument. I've remarked about how I do think that he's going to have the most catches for any of this room just because of the threat of Eric Singleton as a deep threat. But you can't get past the fact that, last year I don't think they used Cam Coleman right. And hopefully they correct it this season. When I say that, it was pretty much go routes and stutter goes. Like it was just they were trying to be a big play offense with using Cam Coleman's speed. Later in the year, when you get to like the Texas A&M game, you start to see him run more the comeback routes, and you start to see him run some of the fade stuff for him. And it was really just, I think at the beginning of the season, it was like they felt like they had like a new toy that they needed to man, let me show you guys what we can do with him, right? Like he can run really fast. Watch. And it was just about his ability to win one-on-one situations, but not really about his ability to run routes. And I think Cam Coleman showed later in the year, I can run routes. I can do more, than this. I'm not a one-trick pony. And I think people had kind of pigeonholed him into that space because he was dropping some of the slant routes. It's like, well, maybe he's not a slant route guy. And I think he showed his ability to run a few more things in the route tree. And hopefully this season you see a next level maturation with him and picking up where he left off at the end of last year.
He's going to make a lot of preseason lists. We're going to be at media days here in a couple months, and I can tell you already, I am my Cam Coleman bias is strong. It's going to be hard not to vote him.
No, Cam Coleman better be first team All SEC at the wide receiver. Better. I'm sorry, he better be. I understand that kid from over there across the state is going to make a lot of lists, but Cam Coleman better be up there as well.
Yeah, I just don't know how you keep him off of it. That nearly 600 yards and 8 touchdowns as a true freshman is nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's a career year for a lot of other receivers. And he did it
Yeah.
in his freshman year with a lot of uncertainty in the passing game, as we know, at Auburn. So Cam Coleman, he's at some point, Auburn's going to have to break the 1,000-yard curse.
Yes.
Ronnie Daniels,
So close
1999.
last year. God, so close.
So close. Darvin Adams came really close. I think it was 997 yards. But in an era where if you make the playoffs, you're playing more games than you've ever played.
Yeah.
So they have more games potentially to break.
If
the
Auburn
record.
had made a bowl game, then Keandre Lambert-Smith needed like
1,000-yard
a
receiver.
catch, and he makes it. Yeah. So
Yeah. One catch, literally by the numbers. One catch would have made
because
Keandre
he
Lambert
averaged something almost 20 yards per catch. Yeah, if he just
19.6.
gets, if he just has one catch that is his average, then he gets it last year.
I was so sad. I thought he was going to do it, but he did what he did on only 50 receptions. Now, before we started recording, we were talking about how many targets and receptions the top guys in the league got, and if you look at the guys who did break 1,000 yards in the SEC last year, only 2 of them did it. Trey Harris and Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I don't like saying their name, but both of those guys had Trey Harris had 60 receptions. He averaged 17.2 yards per catch, but Andrew Armstrong had 78 receptions, averaging 14.6 yards per catch. He was targeted 118 times. 118 times. Then you have Trey Harris, who was targeted 76 times. Guess how many times Cam Coleman was targeted? Like, he was only targeted 55 times last year.
Right.
That's it. 55 targets. That's nothing. Right. You had guys, you had a bunch of guys in the league last year that had more targets than that had more
Catches.
receptions than he had targets.
Right.
That can't happen this year. You've got to throw him the damn football.
Yeah. I mean, listen, just overall, the offense needs to be, we talked about this when we talked about Jarquez Hunter and his draft stock on one of the live streams that we had, and how, we've talked about how criminal it was, how many more carries some of the backs that had more yardage than him got. And it's symptomatic of the offense just not being able to stay on the field. You got to give your guys more opportunities by running more plays, by just being out there, converting third downs more often. When you're getting off the field quickly, you don't give your offense the opportunity to run these numbers up the way that they really need to. This offense needs to stay on schedule this year. A part of that is going to be, look, man, take the free money out there. I think Auburn left a lot of free money on the field sometimes when they're playing off coverage on Cam Coleman by trying to make him run past guys instead of just saying, all right, cool, you're going to play an 8-yard cushion. Cool. We're just going to take this little 5-yard route, throw it to him real quick, get into 2nd and 5. I'm fine with that. If you miss a tackle, he's going to be running for a long time. Right. And so take free money and stay on schedule out there. As the saying goes, you will never go broke taking a profit. Hopefully Jackson Arnold takes a profit as often as he possibly can out there.
I like that. You'll never go broke taking a profit. Cam Coleman looking to add a lot of clout to Auburn's wide receiver bank this year. Let's move on to the next guy, a guy I was always excited about. We're moving here to the slot. His name is Malcolm Simmons. Now, we spoke with Coach Hugh Freeze earlier this week, and this was one of the names he singled out as a guy having made a huge leap. The raw talent was evident. It was right in our faces. With the ball in his hands, Malcolm Simmons is one of the most exciting guys in college football. He said last year he goes 200 miles an hour all the time. Sometimes it's just doing the wrong thing. I asked him flat out, hey, is he doing the right thing now? He said, the transformation has been incredible. This is a guy who projects to be I think he should be 2nd or 3rd team all SEC in the preseason coming in with what he was able to do. Let's talk about Malcolm Simmons here for a second. Those guys in the slot kind of become really important safety valves for quarterbacks like Jackson Arnold in a new system where he might dump it off to him. You might hand it to him on jet sweeps. You know how I feel about jet sweeps. But he's versatile. He can catch. He's fast. He can get behind the defense. Malcolm Simmons is going to be a dude for Auburn football in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, if Coach Hugh Freeze thinks he has a breakout year this year, then I'm going to take him at his word right now and say, Malcolm Simmons was a guy who he kind of was a revelation for the offense, right? A couple of games into the season, Coach Freeze was like, look, we just got to get him the ball. I don't care if you get me a little square on the play sheet that's just his stuff. We're going to put the ball in his hands. Now that he is in a position where he can be out there for more snaps because they trust him to be where he's supposed to be, it changes the dynamic of what your offense can do, because he is a guy that you can get involved in a lot of different ways that you wouldn't necessarily use a Cam Coleman type receiver for. Like, he's not the big catch radius guy, but he is the, as you said, dynamic with the ball in his hands kind of guy, where it's like, hey, we're just going to throw a little bubble screen out here to him real quick and let him get up the field because his speed allows him to do what he needs to do. He's shifty and he can get out there in the open field and make some guys miss. He can hit you over the top. We saw that a few times last season where he went for the long passes up the seam routes, right? And he is a guy who can, catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage, short, and go deep. I didn't see a lot of intermediate route stuff from him, but I think they're going to be asking him to do some of that stuff this year as he lines up in the slot for the team a little bit more frequently. And later last season, when they moved away from Keontae Scott as a returner, you saw Malcolm Simmons back there fielding punts. So that's going to be another opportunity for him to be a guy who can make an impact on football games, is his ability to get the ball in his hands as a punt returner. So I'm looking forward to seeing maybe a full season of Malcolm Simmons in the return game. He didn't get a lot of opportunities to make any returns because they were not kicking the ball to him, but hopefully we can see him as a returner and he gets a dynamic option out there as well. And then, maybe they just line him up and let him punt the ball. Apparently he can just do everything out there, but we'll see what happens with that.
Get your playmakers the ball. That's what Auburn has to do. Malcolm Simmons is a playmaker. Now, it's funny when you talk about a guy as versatile as him, and this is a gaudy comparison, but hear me out. Sometimes when I look at him, I think about how much fun I had in high school watching Peter Warrick play. Yeah. And they would put him at punt return. They would put him on kickoff return. They would any way to get the ball in Peter Warrick's hands because he was so electric. And Bobby Bowden did an interview after a game where like Peter Warrick got handed the ball or something, or they threw it to him on screen and he ran backwards and juked like 15 guys and got tackled. And he was like, it's the prettiest 10-yard loss I've ever seen. I couldn't even be mad at him. He juked so many guys, I couldn't be mad at him. Malcolm Simmons is fun to watch. And I think he's going to be even more fun to watch this season now that he's playing a little bit smarter, knowing Hugh Freeze said when to run tempo routes versus just blast past the defense. The game is starting to slow down for Malcolm Simmons, and that should be a scary thing for defenses in the SEC next year, man. He's going to be a matchup nightmare. Now, he had 40 catches on 49 targets for 11.3 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, 451 yards total. To me, he projects as a 600 to 700 yard receiver this season. I don't think that's an unreasonable jump. Now, if Cam Coleman is your 1,000 yard, if we expect Jackson Arnold to be a 3,000 yard passer, in my opinion, Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons comprise over half of that production. Just a little bit over 50% of that will be to those two guys. And look, there's room to grow from there. We're not limiting him to 3,000 yards. I'm just saying if he only has 3,000 yards, not unreasonable to think that 1,500 is going to be split between Malcolm Simmons and Cam Coleman.
Right. Yeah, I think that Cam Coleman's, because of the litany of ways that they're going to get him involved in this offense, he definitely has the opportunity to go out there and be like you said, a safety valve for him, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, man, we're just gonna throw it out here to Malcolm Simmons real quick. Just gonna throw it out here real quick to him, and Cam Coleman's going to be kind of like a security blanket. So safety valve, security blanket. It's like, all right, it's third down. We need a big catch. Let's go to our big body, big target catch radius guy. It's second down and we need to be able to get second and long and we need to get it into third and short. Let's throw it out here really quickly to Malcolm and see if he can go get us, 6 or 7 yards just on a little quick screen, or we're running tempo. Let's get it out here to him really quickly and see what he can make happen. Lull a defense to sleep. And we, instead of him running the quick bubble screen, we're just going to run him on a wheel up the sideline. He can absolutely go out there and make big plays. I expect him to be a big play threat in this offense this year. Cam Coleman, maybe not as much this season, more of a like I said, a security blanket. I can see Simmons being a big play threat this year.
Yeah. Look, Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, that's half the equation. What is the other half of the equation? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors, our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you are in the Columbus, Phoenix City area, or if you're in the Auburn, Opelika area and you don't mind making the drive down, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Sweet Eye in Phoenix City, Alabama. The Vibe Vault, helping keep the community fresh. It's about time I need to get lined up here for the weekend. Also, our friends at Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code Rapport to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, bad bosses, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that will get you to the right level. Again, rogueshop.com. Make sure you use code Rapport. Guy Richard is sliding a special note in there for everybody who comes in from the War Report. And last but certainly not least, our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron, helping you stay outside, eat right, work out, grill out, chill out. Golden's Cast Iron. Ike, let's jump back in here. We need to talk about the other side of the equation. Let's stick with the slot here. It's a name we've heard all off season. He was the number one player in the portal until Mateer entered the portal, who is now at Oklahoma. It's Eric Singleton. This is a guy Auburn fans are really excited about. Hugh Freeze is really excited about. And certainly it's going to be fun watching him catch passes from Jackson Arnold. Talk to me about Eric Singleton, man. Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton in the slot together, if they're running 10 personnel, that might be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Eric Singleton, we just did all of this talk about how dynamic a guy Malcolm Simmons is. Eric Singleton is just as dynamic, and by a lot of accounts, the fastest guy in that wide receiver room. And that's saying something, because Malcolm Simmons is a blur. And so Eric Singleton is a guy that they said is track speed, right? And so he's a guy that they say is a football player with track speed, not a la Anthony Schwartz, who everybody said was a track runner that plays football, right? So, Eric Singleton is going to be another guy that they can use in a lot of different ways. At Georgia Tech, he was a speed sweep, quick screen, deep ball. Like he did everything for that team as far as like the different ways that he was able to catch passes in that Georgia Tech offense. He's going to have the opportunity to do that here again at Auburn. And, you said both of those guys in the slot, if they're going to be in a 4 receiver set in that 0 personnel, Eric Singleton's going to have the ability or the opportunity to play as an outside receiver in this offense if they're only going to have 3 receivers on the field. You could see him lining up opposite of Cam Coleman in a 3 receiver set potentially, and having Malcolm and him both on the field in that kind of situation as well. I think that Eric Singleton's going to demand a lot of attention. We've talked about this before. He is the deep threat. Now, they have multiple deep threats on this team. He is the deep threat because his speed is something you just can't account. Like you got to acknowledge the fact that he will run past your DB. He just will. And think about this for a second. Let's have Eric Singleton in a 3 receiver set, Eric Singleton on the same side of the field as Malcolm Simmons, right?
Yeah.
And both of them are running what looks like to be go routes, and then one of them breaks it off to a deep over or some sort of stop route, right? And the other one keeps running. Like, how do you cover that with a safety and a DB over the top? You got to put a slot guy on 2 of the fastest guys on the, like, it's a nightmare. And because of the attention that all of that draws to one side of the field, guess who's single covered on the other side of the field? Cam Coleman.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. Jackson Arnold has to be sitting here like, please, just let me get through the season with this complement of receivers, because it's a dream scenario for a quarterback.
His decision to hit the portal was a little bit of a head scratcher. Haynes King is the quarterback over there. We know him from his time at Texas A&M. A little bit of a journeyman quarterback. But our friend Josh Pate likes Georgia Tech in the ACC a lot next year. And so when he hit the portal, I was thinking, why? Like, what's going on there, at Georgia Tech, that he would leave that situation, which didn't seem terrible. But then when you look at the numbers, he only had 56 receptions last year for 754 yards. This is a guy kind of in the mold of a Keandre Lambert-Smith statistically. in
Hmm.
terms of leaving a team where he did okay, but certainly he felt like it could be better, and it was better for Keandre Lambert-Smith at Auburn. I don't care
Right.
how the season turned out. He had a great year. It
He
was a
did.
great decision for him to come to Auburn. No matter how you slice it, he more touchdowns, more yards, more. I just thought it was good for him. And when you look at Eric Singleton in the ACC last year, the numbers don't look really that gaudy. I just don't think they used him right. That's what the numbers point to. 90 target. He had 90 targets last year. Only
Yeah.
3 touchdowns. He averaged 13.5 yards per reception. That's going to be around between 18 to 20 yards per reception at Auburn. I promise you that yards per catch is going to go way up at Auburn this year. So
That was the
Eric
big thing for this
Singleton,
offense, was the big playability of the offense. I don't think that goes away this year when you have a quarterback with a bigger arm.
yeah. Auburn didn't struggle to make big plays.
No.
Matter of fact, like plays of 40 yards or more, they were pretty dynamic throwing the ball down the field. Despite what you might think of Peyton Thorne, he would have been a 3,000-yard passer had he not sat out a game and a half. Those 6 quarters killed his stats, but certainly, he was able to get the ball to Keandre Lambert-Smith. Hugh Freeze has talked repeatedly and until he's blue in the face about having pass catchers with catch radius in this league. You've gone out and you've gotten that. Eric Singleton is only that much more dangerous in being able to go get the types of balls that he's going to need to catch from Jackson Arnold, who he named as starter during our interview. And I just think a 62% reception rate, that's going to be like 75-80 at Auburn. And I mean, he may not. I know we're saying that Cam Coleman touches 1,000 yards. But I think Eric Singleton has the ability to touch 1,000 yards, certainly if we see any improvement at all. And now, again, we're saying if Jackson Arnold is a 3,000-yard passer, that Malcolm Simmons and Cam Coleman account for 1,500 of that. I think Eric Singleton is another 800 to 1,000 yards already there, and that pushes you to 2,300, 2,500 yards passing, and we're not even done yet.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, if and you can call this the book session that you want. So that's fine. Let's be realistic again about what kind of threat these receivers actually are, right? Like they are guys who can run the route tree and can go and make a play right when a quarterback's not completely right. And when you have that ability and you have the danger, then it's just really incumbent upon your quarterback to make the choice of which direction, not predetermined, but okay, you can truly say, all right, what is the defense giving me? Great. I've got a matchup somewhere that's going to be able to be exploited here and just make the right decision, right throw. If Jackson Arnold can do that more often than he does the wrong decision, then they're going to be a dynamic passing offense. It's just, there's no doubt about it. And to your point, you could realistically see a situation where you have multiple receivers over 800 yards this season for Auburn.
Oh my goodness, it's stacking up really nice. I'm telling you, his speed kills. Eric Singleton is guilty as charged. Life sentence. If he's out there killing these fools, man, he's fast. So we've got Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, and Eric Singleton. Who is the last? Who is the guy on the other side catching bombs? Look, man, we think it's Perry Thompson. Perry Thompson looked insane on 8A. He was out there catching every kind of pass you could possibly catch. This is another top 30 overall guy that Hugh Freeze has brought in. And man, it is time for him to show off his talent. Now, he had a little bit of the Malcolm Simmons bug, in that he was doing the game just seemed like it needed to catch up for him mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but maybe a little raw, and so he's got to slow down. He made a big jump. Freeze alluded to the fact that there are times just processing the game, how he runs routes against certain coverages. There are things there,
Right.
but I think he makes the jump. I think he makes the jump this summer and goes into fall camp and solidifies that other spot on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a good opportunity to do it. Of course, the other guy that I think is going to push him for that is going to be Horatio Fields, just because I think Horatio Fields is probably a little bit more. Horatio Fields It's going to be very reminiscent, really, of last year's conversation about whether or who should be playing the slot. Like you argued all last year, man. Just put Malcolm on the field. Just put him on the field. And the reason why he wasn't on the field is because he wasn't where he was supposed to be as often as he should have been. And then you ended up with Robert Lewis getting a lot of those reps at the slot receiver, not because Robert Lewis was the better receiver, but because he was more reliable to be where he needed to be. And
Mm,
so I do wonder whether or not Horatio Fields might be able to be in that position this year where they're pretty much splitting reps as that fourth receiver. Horatio Fields, Perry Thompson. What may give Perry Thompson the edge is he's just a bigger body.
yeah.
And when you need to be able to have an outside guy that can be another catch radius guy, Perry Thompson can be that guy. And you potentially it could move him in to be a big slot, right? Like you could, if you're not
Mm,
going to have a tight end on
okay.
the field, you could move Perry Thompson as a big slot receiver and a guy who can catch the ball over the middle of the field a little bit better than maybe a Horatio Fields could. So you could still have Eric Singleton be an outside receiver, deep threat guy, and then move Perry Thompson to a slot receiver and have him play a big slot slash extended tight end. Again, it's not really a tight end, but you could have him at that big slot because he did a lot of that stuff in high school as well. He was a guy who ran, speed sweeps because he has that kind of speed at a big receiver. So I could see him potentially doing that sort of stuff as well, which I think may, again, give him a slight edge over a guy like Horatio Fields, who I am really high on. I think Horatio Fields is a really good receiver and will get some opportunities in this season with Auburn
Yeah, look,
because he's a
Horatio,
6'3" guy as well, right? Horatio's not a small guy. Like,
not a small guy.
let's be
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Hugh Freeze described Horatio Fields as the Keandre Lambert Smith of this wide receiver room. Not necessarily in terms of play
Ability,
style or
but
whatever,
just
but just
leadership.
leadership, yeah, and attitude. And so they like a lot of things about him. That certainly when you do the little things, it's hard to keep these guys off the field, especially if you know they have the ability. This is a stacked room. We heard a lot about Sam Turner this offseason, just a lot of guys who are just really, really talented. And this is a good problem to have if you're Auburn. You've got a room with so much talent. You don't know who's going to start. This is just who we're projecting. I wouldn't be surprised to see Horatio Fields out there. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised to see, a different mix. But we put this together for our listeners on pod, especially if you're not able to see the graphics that we're putting up. We put this together as if Auburn is going to be running 10 personnel because Hugh Freeze told me directly, I haven't really done that since we've been here, but you're going to see it this year.
He said definitively you will see it this year.
You will
right?
see
Like
it.
he was just So I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, he hasn't committed to that in the past. He said we
Right.
want to try to do that stuff, but they've not been the type of offensive team that Freeze normally employs because they feel like they haven't had the talent, like
Right.
to run a lot of the stuff. Now you close that talent gap, and they think, look, we have the quarterback that can make all the throws and the plays. We have an offensive line that can protect them, hopefully, and
Mhm.
we've got the receivers that can go out and make the catches. We just got to make the right calls, and you should see a much better product on the field. Now,
Right.
I think that running more 10 personnel shows the trust that he has in this quarterback room. He hasn't had before in the past. Jackson Arnold is a guy that didn't just come on Hugh Freeze's radar. He's been on his radar since high school. He said he described him as a freakish talent then, and he still thinks that he does on football field. They love Jackson Arnold, and look, man, I love it too. I love how much he loves Jackson Arnold. So if he's got that much faith in his quarterback, I think it only bodes well for this wide receiver room. Let's take a look again here. Whew, man, it's hard not to look at this and smile. Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, Eric Singleton, Perry Thompson. This is your 10 personnel group. Now, Singleton is very, very versatile. So we had to go to 11 personnel. You might see this look like Coleman, Simmons, Singleton potentially on the outside. I know Singleton, he can play both, or you might see Coleman, Simmons, Fields on the outside. There's a lot you could do here.
Sure.
If you go down to 11 personnel, certainly. Now, do we see any zero looks? I don't know if we go that far, but good God, man, this is a really, really, really good room.
But what's crazy is from a creative play calling standpoint, I could 100% see them doing this because, listen, watched a lot of Georgia Tech film because I was studying um, what Eric Singleton was doing out there, I could
Hmm.
see them have 0 personnel and motion Eric Singleton in as a running back.
Interesting. Okay.
And then, or go into an empty set because of Jackson Arnold's ability to run and see them have like some screens set up on the outside. Like I could see that happening because they have the personnel to be able to do that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be shocked if you saw a 0 personnel situation. You get Malcolm Simmons and or Eric Singleton motioned into the backfield, and then they run some sort of, jet sweep handoff or RPO or read option with one of those guys as the guy running from the backfield. I could see it happening.
Yeah, yeah. Again, talent. The more talent you have, the more versatile your play calling can be, because you have more guys who can do more things, and they just have not had that in the past. It feels like there's been a handicap somewhere, right? We got great receivers. We don't have the guy to get them the ball. We've got great running backs. We don't have great blocking, or we want to run this play. We want to run more slow developing play action plays, but our offensive line can't hold up long enough for those plays to develop.
Right.
Auburn feels like they've solved most of the puzzle. Now you got to stay healthy.
Right.
He said something that was interesting. It's probably a more interesting angle that I've seen a coach take in terms of the change in the spring format. He was talking about DeMarcus Riddick. And he said he had surgery in January and he's missed the whole spring. And if we had June OTAs instead, he could have spent that whole time recovering and then been available to the team in the spring when they needed to start walkthroughs and start to gel as a team. It's probably one of the more compelling arguments I've heard for kind of reorganizing the spring. He described it as an archaic process that we're just sticking to that doesn't really benefit the teams as much as it did before, if it did at all.
Right.
So it's interesting here how the coaches are evolving on trying to get their teams to a place where they're ready for the fall, and you've got to stay healthy, and it's hard to stay healthy when you're getting hurt in the spring, and then you got a guy who has to come in after the spring and recover, and he's not available for game one. It hurts the product. It hurts college football as a whole when the best players aren't on the field playing. But Auburn projects to be fairly healthy headed into fall camp. This is an exciting time on the Plains. I don't know. The anticipation for this season is about the most I think I've experienced in quite some time. I don't know how you feel about it, but I've actually got a lot of, I wouldn't call it hope. I just think I can't wait to see what this looks like.
Yeah, there's a ton of potential out there, right? And the question is whether or not it converts from potential to kinetic. Are they going to actually be able to move and make some stuff happen? But the talent is absolutely there to do it, because that defense is going to be balling. Can the offense hold up their end of the bargain this year more consistently and just stay on the field a little bit more? If they do, then absolutely watch out.
Gangbusters, man. Favorable schedule, lots of talent. Auburn football in 2025 should shock the world, guys. If you are shocked by this segment, don't be. We're here every single Friday talking Auburn football with you guys. I appreciate you for listening. If you're in the comments after the video, do us a favor, hit that super thanks button, little box with a heart and a money sign out there. Show us some love. We'll be on the road covering SEC Media Days in a couple months, but if you want to support the work we're doing, super thanks is a great way to do it. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Rapport. If you like this content, do us a favor, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Rapport on every social media platform, TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.